Hey everybody, we are here with Dana Busch of Dana Busch Designs.
Hello. So excited to
Incredible.
be here.
What?
I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! And the background, you see all of her, that's all of her stuff that she makes jewelry with. You want to show us? Yeah. Pretty cool. That's the actual studio that she works out of. So, Dana, how did we meet? How do you know about me?
Oh my gosh. So I heard about the fabulous Amy from a friend of mine who said, you've got to go have a reading with this woman from the Boulder bookstore, the Lighthouse. And I thought, okay, I've got to go do this. And I've always been someone who's been very connected into looking at other ways of understanding myself and the world. And as much as I also have a scientific background, I used to be a clinical psychologist in medicine where I was also doing research. I very much am spiritually based and believe in kind of this higher connection and source. So
Nice.
I'm always looking for ways to like increase my understanding and gather information to then, go and make decisions. So I've been in a lot of transition between, really moving into my jewelry business, which has really had a lot of success recently, and transitioning aging parents and all of that, and hoping to meet someone at some point too. So I'm like, I've got to go get some information. So I had a fantastic session with Amy, and we hit it off and thought we need to do more stuff together. So here we are.
Yay! Yay! Was I helpful?
Absolutely.
Yay.
I think that just a lot of confirmation for me in terms of how you shared in particular about relationships. Some of the things that, for example, I felt that there might be something about me or my history, that could go back further, that could be partially blocking love, because I've had lots of ease and success in other areas of my life. And so that seemed to show up in the cards and in the intuitive work. And then just confirmation of other things that I'm feeling and sensing from an intuitive level. Other readings I've had, nothing personal, Miss Amy. You know us people that love this. We're all like, oh, and what does this one say? What does that one say? So, and again, just how that all, I think they come together to really just give you, pause and a way to think. Because I mean, at the end of the day, my orientation when I worked with people as a professional, therapist was, it's all about taking your information, but then really taking action, and about really stepping into who you want to be or the changes you want to see in your life. And so you can gather all the information in the world, but if you don't make different changes and you don't relate to your world differently through the choices and actions you take, then you are drastically, in my opinion, reducing the likelihood of changes that are going to happen. So
my gosh.
It's about that, being a creator of your world.
Yes.
So yes.
Yes. Yes. You have to change your perspective and the way that you look at things.
Yeah.
So many people don't realize they don't realize that they're manifesting machines.
Sure.
Bad or good, you guys are creating what you want. It's appearing in your experience. So,
Absolutely.
Everything that's showing up is just evidence of that. What?
Exactly. And I was going to say too, I think that, so one of my own personally coined phrases is, it's a lot easier to live an unhealthy and complicated life than a simple and healthy one.
Ooh,
and which, initially doesn't make sense to people. But, at the end of the day, when you're living from a simple and healthy place, it's also being willing to take responsibility, be aware, set boundaries, make priorities, look at things about yourself you don't want to look at. And, our society doesn't do much to promote that. And, even if you're in a miserable place, it's known and it's familiar, and so there's a comfort in that. And there's always opportunities where the world is telling you that something's not your fault or it's out of your control.
Yes.
So it's very easy to fall into that. And I think in general, humans tend to naturally gravitate towards focusing on what isn't going right or what they're not happy about, and not being able to pull back a little bit further and see the things that are going well, or how to take a situation that isn't great and find the beauty in it, or find the message or the gift that it's bringing up for you to transform. So,
can you guys see why we get along so great? We're like two peas in a pod. And I think that going to a psychic, especially a heart-based psychic that's unbiased and pure-hearted as much as possible, I think that is just the most genius way to go about excelling in your business, in your career, and every area of your life, because they're kind of like your spirit guide or your spotter along the way. Of course, doing it yourself is also really beneficial, but sometimes you need that confirmation of somebody else saying, yes, you're right on track, and it's really good. It's like just more confirmation from the universe, along with all the signs and synchronicities and magical things that start happening and all the miracles. And miracles, Vanity Fair and Vogue, and how in the world did you start and go from whatever that was all the way to the top, baby?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I would say that, so I transitioned into the jewelry a handful of years ago, longer than when I start to really look at how long it's been. And a lot of that too is walking away from many years and moving and a lot of education, from a whole career that was my whole world as a psychologist. And I have an art background. I've always been creative. And so I just started, it was really almost like a therapeutic thing for me when like the whole world of everything of who I was and what I was doing was falling apart around me. And so the jewelry.
Can I just say something real quick there? Because
absolutely.
That was key. So many people feel like if their life is feeling like it's falling apart and everything's changing and they're in a huge thing of transition, that's a bad thing. And it's like, no, that's a tower moment, and that's a course correction. That's to help you get into your most authentic life. So let's just note that Dana's beginning of all the wild success has been from that tower moment where everything was like, what is happening to me?
Exactly. Because I think too, I could have continued to stay in this world, but I knew that from a personal space, which is really about the bureaucracy and politics of being in these settings. I mean, I walked away from being a director of a regional cancer center, a professor at a university, to coming in Australia and coming back to my house and walking away from all that, knowing I wasn't going to do private practice. And, I started, as I lovingly joke, like stringing beads. And so, there's a whole piece about, we've become so attached to, I think what we do is who we are, especially in our country here. And all of the beating yourself up of, why am I doing this? And what are people going to think? And and that's where that really, you need to like have your own battle within, and that power of being willing to go, walk through that fire and be in the sadness and the loss and the, knowing that this is part of that path. And so, I started making things, and then, people would see it and they'd, want to buy it. And so, I'll kind of speed up a little, go over more of the boring stuff, but go to kind of what you were talking about, and how things have really come about. So the last handful of years have also been for me about being a caretaker with parents. And so that was a big responsibility the last handful of years for me as an only child, and was doing my jewelry. I'd already been successful in terms of being in a gallery I've been designing for 7 years and having, clients around the country and, having my website. But there's been these other things that have been kind of part of that process. And so really this last spring when, my dad has passed, my mom is now back here in Denver, and really making more space for me on the burner. And I think that's another thing that I'm sure a lot of your clients and people watching this look at too, is finding that balance. And, for me, I am a giver, I am a caretaker, and it's easy for me to sometimes not put myself first in the way that I need to. And so really this last spring, there was more time and more opportunity to do that. And all of a sudden, opportunities just started coming in. And I think part of it was I had hired my friend's daughter, who's home from college, to go into my Instagram, because I'm one of those, as I lovingly joke, old people who doesn't understand technology very well.
Tell them about what happened this morning.
Oh my God. So I wanted to see Amy's extended from her most
that less
reading.
selective reading. Yeah.
And I go in and I'm like, okay, I click on this and it said, oh, there isn't an extended, but I clicked on the link and then I got to her page and I was assuming it would probably just be right. And I'm seeing dates that don't make sense. And so I'm writing her and I'm like, I can't find it. Like, it's there. I'm like, I looked, and she's like, it's really there. I'm like, but here's the thing. And then I scrolled down and, I'm definitely someone too, that I think this is another important thing that gets in the way for people, is being able to laugh at yourself and joke.
Yes.
I lovingly call myself a grandma around certain things, because it's like, I am. It's like, technology is always changing and I don't love it, but I have to. And that's another piece of being successful. No matter what business you're in, there are key foundational pieces that are going to lead to being successful or not. And you either need to figure out how to do them, or you need to be willing to hire someone to do them. And again, all that's about making priorities.
Gotta evolve.
So my friend's daughter was home and she needed some hours, and I needed someone to put hashtags in my Instagram and file papers and do all the stuff that, I don't want to do. And also that aren't the best and highest use of my time in growing my business. I cannot have anyone even pick out a simple strand of beads for me, because I'm so picky about all of that. So she started putting in these hashtags, and all of a sudden, I'm getting people liking my page and people doing this. And I really feel how that led to them being discovered by a small exclusive to the trade event in New York City, and the publications, and another trunk show in DC. And so
go hashtags.
Yeah.
Go technology.
Because I mean, to me, I'm like, well, this has to be, how it's all come about. So what Amy was mentioning with the publications was in the spring, right around the time Jolie was entering all my data, I got a email from Vanity Fair over in United Kingdom saying, we've seen your work, we think it's beautiful, we think it would be a great fit for our publication, would you be interested? So of course I'm like, well, of course. And that goes to I think another nugget of business is sometimes you need to stretch. And one of the phrases out there, not my own coined one, is you have to make spend money to make money. And I try and be pretty conscious too with my jewelry expenses and my money, and using that for doing things that are going to create opportunities for me. And I think you're always having to kind of weigh that. And the more you have an understanding of your vision and your direction of whatever your business is, it helps you to sort and be discerning about opportunities that come in. Because some opportunities, it's always a compliment to get an opportunity. It doesn't mean they're always the right fit. And so, because of how I've really been specific in crafting how I want people to view my business, and the perception I felt that, being in this publication would be great. And then a lot of them are all owned by the same bigger company. So this is really all connected under Condé Nast, which is another well-known publication. So then I'm getting emails from Vogue and from Glamour and from a publication that's British-based called Tatler, which I happened to be at the Whole Foods about a month ago, and I see it, and I'm like, this is never in the U.S. And it was actually, my stuff in there. So I'm in the Whole Foods line, and I've got all these magazines, and I'm trying to take pictures. And I think that people around me were kind of like, well, this is crazy. So I'm like, well,
What's she doing?
I'm in the magazine, and they're like, oh, you own something. I'm like, no, I made the stuff. And so yeah, just, very exciting. And this To the Trade show in DC is very small. It's curated. You have to apply or be invited. I was invited. And I think, again, they probably found me on Instagram, and they'd seen the publications because they mentioned that. And they partnered at a time of year when some other very big To the Trade events are going on, where, stores, publicists, publications are coming to see what's new in the jewelry industry, or to buy, or to, do something related to whether they have a store or publication. And so I did that, and, met probably the most important things I got from that were really meeting a handful of influencers in the field. So, for example, this coming Friday, I'm having an interview with a lovely woman whose company is the Jewelry Navigator, and she had decided to follow her passion as well, and has been building this business of really helping and supporting designers. And so really lovely. And then that led me to being invited to the sister show for Metal & Smith, which is Finery Row. And that was a to the public event in DC, where I got my biggest thing there was getting hooked up with another woman who is really established as an influencer in the field. And she's Diamonds in the Library, Becky. And she wants to write me up in a To the Trade publication that is very well respected. And she has almost 100,000 Instagram followers. So,
Nice.
So those are great. And I think, there were obviously these great wins from these two events. There were some things that, didn't happen. But, I think whenever you decide to do something, it's like, okay, there's always a certain amount of risk, and you need to go in saying, okay, is the risk, minimal enough that, this is going to be a good opportunity regardless. And how do I, leverage the gifts that come from it? And then if there's something that wasn't a fit or wasn't right, how does that help me discern better in the future what I'm doing? And so, I'm really lucky to be with a fabulous gallery in Tucson, Medicine Man Gallery. And I can't say enough fabulous things about the owners, and, ended up in their gallery very randomly, because you wouldn't expect to see my jewelry in a gallery that's high-end Western art and mostly Native American old pawn jewelry, rugs. But Kathleen bought some of my jewelry and was wearing it in her gallery, and her clients wanted to buy it because at the end of the day, we share a very similar client base, in terms of what that person enjoys and appreciates and understands and spends their money on. And they said, like, let's try this. And it's been an amazing run, and they're good friends as well. And
you got to think out of the box.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
what's saying yes to you. You found the commonality.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's, it's been fantastic. And, part of it now is I've had all these great things, and where do I go from here? I mean, I've had some other emails that have come through about, oh, do you want to participate in, in this event or that event, and, or some other publications or some online things. And some of them have been great compliments, but after looking at them, I know it wasn't the fit. So now I'm kind of in that sifting and sorting. And then I'm also in the not giving so much of my time to other people, which is showing up for me in terms of just, how do I balance some of that out? How do I make the time for my mom? And then, of course, let's get it like what I really came to about Amy, which is romance, which is supposedly like coming in like a firestorm. So, so I got to have space for that, right?
Yeah. Did that last reading resonate?
Oh yeah, that one did too. Yes.
I was.
I'm being patient. I'm being patient. I have my vision, and yeah. So, and I also just feel like I'm really in a place for that, and probably even more so from a personal place of really knowing what, not so much what I deserve or all of that, but just a certain level of confidence in myself, and which I think changes who sees you and who doesn't see you.
Yeah.
So,
I gotta agree on that.
Yeah.
And another good point you made was about the investing. I want to hear more about like what you had to invest in, because I totally understand. I just did the same thing, and I spend freely. I spend freely. I'm just like, yes, because I know it's going to come back 10,000 times.
Exactly. And I think
and the mindset that you have to have. So tell me about some of these investments that.
Sure. So
kind of going along the same path as you.
Exactly. So for example, when I first decided I was really going to dive into the jewelry, it was like, well, I need a website. And I think also because my business is an aesthetic one, and I really market my jewelry as art, I was very much in the mindset of how, and of course now it's going through revamping because everything changes, everything becomes ancient like 5 days later. But, so this was back in the beginning of 2009 when this launched, and that was early on in the days of templates, and I'm like, they're all ugly, they don't work for my stuff, I don't like this. So actually I paid a web architect to build it from the back end. And
an architect, I like that.
Yeah, so we sat down and collaborated because I knew exactly how I wanted it to look, what the perception was, all of those kinds of things. But I needed him to design it in a way that I could go in and not have to write code and not have to, like, I could just do things very simply. And so, and it, was a bigger investment, but, for me, it's like, this is what's setting the foundation up for how people are going to view me. And I can't take that back. And this is the investment I'm making. And now fast forward, the gentleman who built it, of course, is so busy. He doesn't have time to kind of do some of that updating. And then I'd reached out to other computer people I know. But now I've gotten hooked up with a lovely young woman who has been updating in a way where we're changing, just again related to how things flow or how people use the website. So we're doing something that still maintains the aesthetic that I want, but has more of the functionality that is intuitive to people from how my site was before. Still has the ease of the back end and how to set it up. And, so for me, those aren't small investments. I mean, my website that I built in 2009, I probably spent $15,000 on. Wow. And this current one is not going to be inexpensive either because, again, she's really building it. But for me, because of how I want people to perceive it, and it's interesting, like I will go online, and she asks, and both of them asked me to do this, can you send me examples of, what you like and what you don't like? And of course, I go to all these jewelers whose jewelry I think is really lovely. And a lot of them, I'm like, your website is dreadful. I would have to keep jewelry by how you did this. So and which again, for me, knowing the jeweler, knowing their work, and for their website to give me that perception, I can only imagine. So, so that's, that's a good example. I would say, time is money too. So, I have lots of nights and days where I'm at home and I'm, getting stuff done for a deadline, and, and I've chosen that I'm not going to go out, or I'm not going to do certain things. So I would say that that's another form of investment, is that there's a lot of hours and a lot of time that you need to put in for something to be, really successful. And, and if you don't do that, and then I guess the question is, well, why, why? It's always getting to that, what's behind that? Because again, you look at anyone who's successful, and there's a foundation of principles that no matter what their business is, are there. So, but then, other financial things like my inventory. So when I first started, I would, so all my little stones behind me, I would maybe buy, 1 strand or 2 strands, and then I'd be making stuff, and all of a sudden I, wouldn't have more of those beads. And even though I'm meticulous, like I count every gemstone on a strand. So I know to the penny what everything costs. And I've got a whole file drawer where everyone has a file. And I know, but even so, like the reality is I'm never going to get that exact stone again, even if I have the vendor's contact details and I can say when I bought it and what it looked like. So now I make the investment of buying, more strands at a time, because I want to have enough, and I know that I'm never going to get this exact stone again, because they're all hand cut, even though they look uniform. And so having more volume and having the amount of small stones I have allows me to be incredibly creative. Like if I had 6 containers, I wouldn't be able to be creative, because I'd have to sit down and go, ugh, okay, what do I do now with these 6 damn stones? I've already done one thing. Where here, I have my central stone, like on my earrings here. This is ocean jasper, and then this is cluster.
I love ocean jasper.
And, I can sit over there and say, okay, out of my 3,000 containers, what little stones am I going to look at starting to create this design with? And so I have that flow. I have that freedom of flow, because my opportunities are endless with those materials. So, so I think that, that's some of it too. So there's that investment up front, and
back to you believing in yourself.
Yeah.
If you were thinking small potatoes, you wouldn't even keep spending that much and getting more.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be expanding if you didn't believe in yourself.
Exactly. That's right.
Back in the day, did you go to Etsy, or did you sell in a little store, or was there?
Yeah. So not,
things?
I would say, so how it started out early on is you make something and you'd have it on, and your friends and family, oh, that's cute, that's pretty, and they would buy. And then I had a few like small shows that I invited people to here in Denver. At the time, my parents were living full-time in Santa Fe, which is, one of the top like high-end art destinations in the United States. In fact, years ago, there were just a couple cities you would go to for a really large density of high-end art, and Santa Fe is one of them. And my parents' love for art and all that is really what took them down there. So my mom, who's a very talented, creative woman, had a great space that she did her art in for her own enjoyment in the heart of the gallery district. So I would take advantage of that location and would go down during a lot of the major art events and festivals and times of year. And I put my little trunk show sign, and I'd have little signs leading back to my mom's studio that I, transformed into a trunk show. And of course, she would make homemade cookies, and she'd have the Wall Street Journal and a newspaper for the husbands who were dragged in there to sit down and read. And, Santa Fe draws clients and customers and tourists from all over the world. So then I was gathering a really large base of customers. I had my website. So I would go several times a year and do events. That's actually where I met Mark and Kathleen, who have Medicine Man Gallery. They used to have a full-time space down there that was almost next to my mom's studio. So Mark and Kathleen came in one day and she's like, oh, I want this and this and this. And and then as a result of the Santa Fe shows, I also had clients that came in and bought jewelry that then invited me to come to their city. Because that's the other thing I say to people, I'm happy. I love to travel. I'll bring the jewelry. I'll bring it to where you live. Cool. And so I ended up with shows in a handful of cities around the country. And, you
made lots of connections. I mean, you really reached out and touched a lot of people.
Yeah. It's, it is. It's, again, that kind of personal relationship. And I think, again, with my background, and, I do have on my business cards, doctor, because I worked really hard to earn that. And it also, though, leads to interesting conversations because people also find it really curious that I have these two very different backgrounds. Although you're
a jewelry doctor, you're a stone doctor.
Exactly. What I say to people too is, the work I did as a psychologist is very creative. So first, there's a research side, which when I was applying for graduate schools, I thought, I need research. I'm not going to like research. But it's like creating a piece of art. And because I have a creative mind, I was able to be very effective at designing research studies because I would have a very out-of-the-box way of looking at a situation we were trying to design an intervention for, and how are we going to do it, and pulling in different pieces, and working with people who have a lot going on in their life that's upsetting and distressing and limiting. How do you work with them to be creative around how they look at things? And there's so many people that say, "Oh, I'm not creative," but most, a good percentage of them say they're good problem solvers. I'm like, well, that's creativity. Creativity. Sure. We have a very narrow mind of it. It's like, oh, can I draw a tree or not draw a tree? And if I can't draw a tree, then I'm not creative. It's it stems well beyond art. And and I think that goes into my success that I've had too, in terms of just, how do I look at different things as opportunities, or how do I take advantage of situations? And like I said, my mom had this great space and the art community, and then, choosing to like, okay, I'm going to, go down there and I'm going to sit in a little studio and hope people come in and out. And, that's around kind of that commitment piece. And then I think another piece that comes in, and I'm sure you get this all the time with your clients, is value. So, for example, I think a lot of artists don't make any money because they don't charge what they should be charging for their stuff. And I think it's very easy for someone who's an artist to also get talked down by people who just don't. Why is it this much, or why is it that much? And so, I definitely know what my financial cost going into a piece is, but there's so many other things that go into the expense, all, the time and the hours and the inventory and, the cost of things for my studio space. But then there's just, quite frankly, the aesthetic value. And I put a price on it. And usually that is, the barrier for people. Like if I decided to sell my stuff for, a half or a third of what it is, it would, could be flying out the door, but I wouldn't be being in integrity with myself and the value of my work. I could be designing something that didn't excite me, that was like everyone else who takes a stone and puts an air wire on it and calls it jewelry. I'm like, jewelry. And I see that too. There's a lot of well-known designers that people are like, oh, that's beautiful. I'm like, it's a stone with an air wire on it. Like anyone can do that, but their name is on it. So I think that's a hurdle that people hit. too, is that, understanding the value of what you're doing and being willing to hold that boundary and recognize that not everyone's, going to be your customer.
Mm.
And,
Mhm.
and
That's
that
right.
helps refine, again, who your customer is, who's going to appreciate you, who you're going to collaborate with, where you're going to do
Yeah.
stuff.
You're
And
building your tribe,
yeah, exactly.
which kind of actually leads me into asking you about these mala dinners that you're starting to put on.
Yes. So this coming weekend, I am having a lovely woman, and her company is Dark DARC Moon. And I met Linnea because I did a mala making workshop that she had, and I'm like, oh, this is fabulous. I need to have one of these at my house. So this is something. This is the first one I've done for her, but I've done other things. So I have another fabulous friend, Jane Sanders, who does scientific hand analysis, and I did an event for her. I have a friend who is trained in the Donna Eden Essential Energetic Works, and she came and did a workshop. So something that I love to do is I love to gather people, and I love to expose them and introduce them to wonderful things like this that I feel are another way of getting in touch with yourself, getting in touch with your intuitive side, and bringing more information in. And Amy and I just need to figure out what that little function event's going to be for her too. Another piece of this, and I think this goes to a bigger calling that I know I've been brought to this planet for, is I'm here to be a connector for people, to provide guidance and wisdom. I mean, obviously, for a number of years, I did it in a very traditional role as a psychologist and working in a very therapeutic way. I do feel that my jewelry has that component, and that people are drawn to it for a reason, and that there's a piece of that that's intended to be healing. I had the opportunity to build the house that I'm in, and as part of that process, I did a sacred ceremony to clear the lot, to heal the lot. I buried a crystal grid around it, but then during the process, I also embedded several sacred geometry crystal grids behind the walls, under the foundation, in certain rooms for certain purposes.
Ooh,
And
good idea.
And I really feel my house, and why I had the opportunity to do this, was because it's supposed to serve a greater purpose. And one of the purposes is to have it being a gathering place for certain things. And as much as I'm very private, like people in my neighborhood, when they finally meet me and they're like, then happen to find out which house is mine, they're like, oh, that house. Well, everyone wants to know about that house or who's in it, because there's a part of me that's very private, and I know that who and what I bring in, I'm intended to, and yet it isn't just like an open door for anyone or anything. So there is this discernment for me about all of that, and then I just feel in general it's giving out good energy to everyone that is in the area. So, but that there's a very special piece of what it's about and what it's supposed to do. So
I can't wait to see it.
I know, I can't wait to have you see it too.
Yeah.
And get your vibe sense on it. So
oh yeah.
because I definitely have friends and professionals that I collaborate with who are very sensitive to all of that, and they come in, and I always love to hear what their experiences are, and what they're getting from it too. So yeah, absolutely. So
yay.
yes.
Gosh, well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And
oh my God, it's fantastic. I'm thrilled to have had this this opportunity. I think it's great that you're doing this, and
Thanks.
we need more of this. We need more people that are focusing on these kinds of things, and and getting in touch, because as much as we would all agree that there's a lot of stress out there and the world is in a lot of chaos in a lot of ways, that there's a lot of wonderful things that we can be choosing to focus on and putting our energies into and attending to. And I think that the more people do that, the more all of the awful stuff in the world naturally transforms.
Yes.
That's where the energy is going. And
it's all about where you put your attention, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. I agree. So that's what we all need to be doing.
All right. Well, have a beautiful day. And for everybody who's watching, thank you so much for taking the time out to sit and chat with us.
This is great.
And have a beautiful day, you guys. We'll talk to you the next time we make one of these.
Yay. Thank you, Amy. All righty.
Bye. Bye.